Hey guys, welcome back to another What's Up video. As I promised you before in the previous video, I would make a video explaining the smallest unit that can live on its own and that makes up all living organisms. Well, take a guess. I mean, it's also on the screen here, so I'm dramatizing it, but yeah, I'm going to be talking about cells today. Cells. I'm going to define what is a cell. I'm going to explain the structure of a cell, and I hope you understand it better after this video. I can tell you're very excited right now, so I won't keep you waiting, and let's dive into it. First up, what is a cell? Cells are basic building blocks of all living things. So basically, they're like the Lego bricks that make up the castle. Okay, cells are the human body is composed of around 10 to 100 trillion of cells. That is a lot of cells. These cells, they provide structure for the body, like as I mentioned just now, the Lego bricks building up the castle. They take in nutrients from food in order to convert these nutrients into energy. So they create energy for your body, and they also carry out specialized functions in your body, specialized actions. For example, the cells can make up your organs, and each cell can have their can be a bit different from the other ones. For example, a muscle cell differs from, for example, from a digestive cell, or from like one of your cells in your brain. They're different. So, all cells can be sorted into one of two groups: eukaryotes and prokaryotes. A prokaryote is a single-celled organism, basically. If you have heard of that term, it's basically an organism that has only one cell. For example, many microbes, like bacteria, they consist of a single cell only. However, eukaryotes, as you guessed, are many cells. Have many cells. Are many multi have many cells. For example, they like humans are eukaryotes. Humans have 10 to 100 trillion cells in their bodies, so they count as eukaryotes. These cells in eukaryotes have nucleus and organelles, so they're membrane-bound organelles, while a prokaryote usually does not have nucleus and does not have organelles inside the cell. So yeah, cells also contain the body's hereditary material, and they can make copies of themselves. So cells, they have many parts, each part with a different function. Some of these parts are called organelles. These parts or organelles perform specialized tasks inside the cell in order to keep it functioning. So the cell is also like another micro universe where there are different things supporting it, as you can see in this diagram. There are a lot of different things like these, and now I'll explain what these are. So let's just go here. First up, the membrane. It's the outside of the cell. Here, it's like this. It's also called the plasma membrane, and it's like the city wall of this cell, as you see here. The cell membrane, it is found in all cells. It separates the interior of the cell from the outside. So the cell membrane, it regulates the transportation of materials entering and exiting the cells. It's basically like this wall. It surrounds the city and it prevents intruders from entering or exiting. The cell membrane consists of a lipid bilayer, semi-permeable lipid bilayer. And by semi-permeable, I mean that some substances, like for example water, it can go in and out of the cell, but not others. Not others. For example, like sometimes when the viruses come, the cell membranes stop them. And so yeah, they're like the guards of the city wall. So yeah, this is a basic diagram of the cell membrane. Next up, cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is a funny term. What does cyto mean? Well, cyto means cell, and plasm means stuff. So, cytoplasm basically means cell stuff. So, think about the cell as a big water balloon, and the water balloon has little pieces of stuff floating around inside. And the cytoplasm is the water inside the water balloon. It's a little bit thicker than water in real life, but it makes up the majority of the inside of most cells. So you can see here, the blue stuff is the cytoplasm. It allows things to flow inside. The cytoplasm is mainly composed of water, salts, and various organic molecules. Actually, the cytoplasm, it's like, I would explain it as kind of like jelly. So it feels like a jelly-like texture. And yeah, the cytoplasm also supports the other structures, and for example, the nucleus you can see here. Now, moving on, as I mentioned just now, the nucleus. What is the nucleus? The nucleus is a really important part of the cell. It's basically the brain, the command center of the cell. I hope this picture looks like a command center. It sends directions to the cell to grow and mature and divide or die. So basically, it just controls the cell. It is like the nucleus. It houses DNA. It houses the deoxyribonucleic acid of the cell, the hereditary material that allows the cell to reproduce, and make copies of itself. And the nucleus also has a membrane around it. So the nucleus is like a separate structure within the big structure. It has a wall around it. It has a nucleus. It has a membrane around it. And this membrane, this nuclear envelope, it can keep the chromosomes inside and make it different from the chromosomes outside and in the other organelles and other components of the cell. So it can separate it. And because the chromosome here is unique when compared to some other parts. For example, the mitochondria, which I'll explain later. Sometimes things like RNA need to traffic between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. They need to move in and out. And so there are pores. There are nuclear pores that allow these molecules to go in and out of the nucleus. It is used to be thought, actually, that the nuclear membrane only allows molecules to go out. But now it is realized that there is also a process of bringing molecules into the nucleus too. So yeah, next one, the fourth part I'm going to introduce to you is the endoplasmic reticulum, or the ER. I'll just call it the ER because this name is too long. There are two types of ERs: the smooth ER and the rough ER. Well, but let's talk about what the ER is first. As I added a picture here, this is a warehouse. And so basically, the ER helps produce and process molecules created by the cell. So the ER also transports these molecules to their specific destinations, either inside or outside the cell. So basically, they are like the sorting, packaging section of the cell, organelle of the cell. The rough EL has on it ribosomes here, which are organelles that make proteins, which I'll explain later. And sometimes when those proteins are made improperly, incorrectly, the proteins stay within the ER and they're retained, and the ER becomes engorged because it seems to be like, it's kind of like constipated in a way. So that's because the proteins don't go out when they're supposed to go, because they're kind of malfunctioning. So that's why the rough ER has ribosomes on it, and it's called rough because it looks like it looks rough. And the smooth ER, oh wait, actually I just realized I flipped the photos. So basically this photo is a photo of rough ER and this one's smooth. And so the smooth ER, well, you guessed it, there are no ribosomes inside the smooth ER. And so the smooth ER produces other substances needed for the cell, not only protein. Now let's talk about ribosomes, because I've been going on and on about ribosomes. Ribosomes are organelles that are responsible for making proteins for your body, as I explained just now. There are many ribosomes in each cell. Each type of ribosome is made up of two subunits, the large subunit and the small subunit, here and here. These two subunits lock around the messenger RNA, and then they travel along the RNA, and they read the 3-letter codons, as you see here. And so the ribosome serves as a docking station for the tRNA to match to the mRNA. So this is the tRNA and this is the mRNA, and the ribosome allows it to be matched. And with the matching, the ribosome allows for the addition of a specific amino acid on the end of the growing protein chain. So the ribosome then breaks up after the completion of the protein. And then these organelles can float freely in the cytoplasm or be connected to the endoplasmic reticulum, as I explained just now. So yeah, next, the Golgi body or Golgi apparatus. This little organelle is a cell organelle that helps process and package proteins and lipid molecules, especially proteins destined to be exported from the cell. So the Golgi is located right next to the nucleus usually, or near, close enough. It's called a perinuclear body, and it's actually right near the endoplasmic reticulum as well. And when proteins come out of the ER, they go into the Golgi for further processing. For example, carbohydrates are put on some of the proteins, and then afterwards, these glycoproteins, meaning proteins that have carbohydrates on it, these glycoproteins, they move out of the Golgi to the rest of the cell, and they do so inside vesicles. Vesicles are like vehicles, are like delivery trucks to deliver the protein. Actually, one of the functions of the Golgi is to make new vesicles out of the existing membrane of the Golgi and put into those vesicles the glycoprotein and other substances that are made in the Golgi network. And then those vesicles, filled with Golgi products, move to the rest of the cell, usually through the cell to the plasma membrane, which is their end destination, and then they can get the glycoproteins out of the cell. So the Golgi apparatus, in my opinion, is like the post office, where they sort the letters and deliver them in vesicles, like post trucks, which is pretty cool, I think. Alright, the second last one I want to explain to you is the lysosome. These organelles are the recycling centers of the cell. They contain digestive enzymes in order to break down excess or worn out cell parts, and also to destroy viruses and bacteria. And finally, if the cell is damaged beyond repair, lysosomes can help it to self-destruct in a process called programmed cell death or apoptosis, which I explained in my previous cancer video. And finally, I saved the best for the last, mitochondria. If you recall before, I said mitochondria has its own hereditary material, and I'll explain that later. So mitochondria are complex organelles that generate most of the chemical energy needed to power the cell's biochemical reactions. So the chemical energy produced by the mitochondria is stored in a small molecule called adenosine triphosphate, ATP. Mitochondria contain their own small chromosomes. They have their own genetic material separate from the DNA in the nucleus, and they can make copies of themselves. And one cool thing is that generally the DNA from the mitochondria are inherited only from the mother, which is pretty cool. And so I would say the mitochondria is like a power plant. It's like a factory. It powers the whole city, for example. And there you go. These are the main types of cells. But obviously, keep in mind that there are other smaller, less important parts that I didn't want to talk about because I didn't want to bore you to death. So yeah, just keep in mind. And so now you might be wondering, how do cells create you? Like, what do they form? Well, there's something called a level of organization. Levels of organization in your body, it explains what these cells can form and how it pieces together to form your body. So basically, a cell is formed from the multiple organelles that I explained just now, and it can go on to form tissues. And no, not the ones you blow your nose with. In this case, tissues are groups of cells that have similar structure and that function together as a unit. For example, muscle cells can group together to form muscle tissue. And these tissues can group together to build your organs, like heart, liver, lungs, stomach, kidneys, bladder, etc. And then, with all of these organs, the body can form organ systems, like the digestive system with the liver and stomach, or, for example, the urinary system with your bladder and kidneys. And finally, with all these organ systems, guess what is produced? Well, You, us, humans, organisms, or animals, or plants. That's why you have to thank these tiny cells for creating and making you. But if you're curious, then you might have spotted something very important that I haven't explained yet. As I mentioned just now, there are many hereditary materials inside the cells that allow it to reproduce and make copies of itself. But how do they do that? How do they reproduce? How do they make extra copies of themselves? Why do we have trillions of cells? How does this happen? Well, I'm sorry, but this video is like 16 minutes long already. So remember to subscribe and turn on the notifications, as I will be making a video explaining cellular reproduction soon. I hope that in this video you learned a lot more about the basics of a cell and the functions of a cell. And remember, cells are basic building blocks. They build you. Without it, nothing living would exist at all. So I'll leave you here. Zachary from What's Up, signing off.